All right. Hello, beautiful bosses. My name is Rosie. I'm the calligrapher and engraver behind Wandercrafter, as well as the creator and the coach of the Craft Academy. So with the art of calligraphy engraving, I've had the pleasure of working with some amazing brands like Dior, Kerastase, and NBC. I've created the Craft Academy to actually teach other calligraphers how to work with their dream brands as well. Today, I have an amazing treat for you. I'm actually sitting down with Shaochen, who is the artist and the powerhouse behind Monstera Gold. Today, we are going to be talking about how to find your specific niche in the calligraphy industry, how Shaochen ended up finding her niche in the wedding industry, and why it's important to build those multiple income streams. So her work has actually been published in national and international publications like Salome Pretty and Cosmo Bride, and she's worked with some very notable brands like Louis Vuitton and Bulgari. So she's actually created her pro wedding calligraphy course last year and just launched her newest course, which is the Seating Chart Success, which is what we're going to be talking about today as well. So if you haven't already, make sure that you hit subscribe to our channel so that you don't miss any fun or educational videos like this one. Without further ado, I present to you Shaochen.
Hey everyone, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me, Rosie. I'll talk a little bit about just like how I got started with calligraphy. So I actually started in 2018. I took my very first class, and at the time it was just like a hobby because honestly, like I have the worst handwriting and I was always jealous of people who had really beautiful lettering. So I was like, okay, maybe I can do this too. And I found that it was not only like fun and relaxing, but I was like decent at it. I was working this really stressful job at the time, like a startup job, very demanding. And in 2019, I realized that I needed to leave because it was just not a great place for me to be for like my mental health and stuff. So I left kind of abruptly and I wasn't really sure what to do next. Like obviously I thought about just getting another similar job, doing what I was doing at a different company, but I had always had in the back of my mind this dream to build a small business, but I didn't know what that looked like. And so when calligraphy kind of like came into my life, I realized that that was actually a way that I could start building a business that didn't require like a lot of upfront capital, didn't require me to have a storefront. It just felt like a more accessible way for me to start a business. And so I just kind of gave myself a 6-month runway to try that out. And 3 years later, I'm still here. So it's been a really fun and kind of a wild journey so far.
Yeah, I always forget that you've only had it for 3 years, but you have had such major success so far, which is why I look up to you so much. I found you pretty early on in my own calligraphy business journey, and I've always resonated with your story because you went from, a corporate person into going straight into a calligraphy CEO. And so that's always been really awesome to see your journey. And you always give such amazing tactical advice in all of your posts and stuff. And so it's just such an honor to be here interviewing you today. So I know you got into the wedding industry. You've built your business around the wedding industry. How did you get into that? And what do you still love about it?
So I think going into my business, I kind of knew I wanted to do weddings. I'm just kind of a sucker for weddings. I love them. I'm the person who's like crying at the vows. And I just feel like being able to be part of someone's really special day, anything that you contribute or create to that just has this extra elevated meaning. Like I know that whenever I see something that I had at my wedding and I keep, I'm the person who like goes home with all the place cards from people's weddings and stuff, that always reminds me of that day. And so I really wanted to be a part of that. I kind of started in the wedding industry by just creating a couple of different products, like really thinking through what people would want in that space and what you actually need for weddings. And the great thing about being in the wedding industry is like you've probably been to a wedding. And so you are already kind of have been a firsthand guest. You kind of know when you've had a great experience or maybe when you haven't had such a great experience, and you can kind of think through like what you actually would need for a wedding and use that to start develop what I call like product development essentially. And so that was really my first step in thinking about the wedding industry is like, what is the audience and what do they actually need from a calligrapher? And that's where I kind of started honing in on day of signage for me. I actually don't do, even though I'm in the wedding space, a lot of times I get asked to do invitations and I actually don't do wedding invitations. I don't have a graphic design background. And so that's not really like where I feel like I have my strength or where I actually want to build my strength. So I just focus on day of like wedding signage, and that's been a blast.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I love that you talked about that there's still multiple niches within the calligraphy wedding niche. So it's awesome that you've really honed in on the signage and the day of items, and that's really what gives you joy. So we'll definitely dive into that a little bit more. Give us a little bit more of a background. Like when you first started your calligraphy journey and business, did you already know that you were going to do weddings, or did you sample in other things?
So my approach when I first started was to kind of try it all. So I gave myself those like first 6 months to do a bunch of experimentation. And so I actually started on Etsy, which we can talk about later, was not a great approach for the wedding industry that I personally found. I started on Etsy. I put up all these like the different products that I just mentioned, but there's just a ton of saturation, competition out there. You end up competing on price. And I just thought it wasn't the right strategy, basically. I did some pop-ups. I have always really loved like going to craft fairs. I thought maybe I would enjoy being a pop-up vendor. Turns out I didn't really like that. I realized through my experimentation that I didn't really love being a product-based business, which is when you like either carry a lot of inventory or like for the pop-up side to create a lot of like, custom things to sell, but without really knowing what would sell. And that was one thing that was really tough for me. I never did workshops, but I did do live events. I still do live events. I took custom commissions. Like I've written on everything from like a ukulele to like poems and Chinese calligraphy and all that kind of stuff. To answer your question, like long story short, I tried to do it all. And I think that is really important when you're first starting your business, because you like so much of it is learning what you like to do and also what you don't like to do, which is like equally important. And so through that whole process, I think those 6 months really showed me where I wanted to focus. And that was super important.
Yeah, I love that. And what's also awesome about that is that you gave yourself the 6 month leeway so you could experiment and try things out before you actually chose the niche. And on top of that, you tried out to even see if you even liked calligraphy in the first place, right? Because like having a business in calligraphy is totally different than having a dream of having a business. So the reality is a little bit different than what you kind of think it's going to be. What was your journey like when you became that full-time artist? What did you need to have during those 6 months to give you that runway and to make you feel comfortable?
So before I made the decision not to go find another job, I definitely made sure I had enough savings. So obviously I did some math to figure out what my monthly expenses were and looked at how much money I had saved up to see if I could give myself that 6 months without feeling financial pressure. And I think that was so important because like you really shouldn't have the expectation that you're going to make money right away. I think that's always the goal of having a business. A part of the goal of having a business is making money ultimately, right? Otherwise it wouldn't be a business. It would just be a hobby. I did set that time aside for myself. I basically made sure that like I put enough in my savings account that I could pay all of my expenses every month without having to put pressure to make additional money. But I still set up some initial goals because I just wanted to test the waters and have like some ideas in mind. So I think probably not right away, but during that 6 months, at some point I was like, okay, let me try to make like $1,000 a month. And what would that look like? And try to work backwards from there. So it is important to have some sense of like where you want to be, because after that 6 months, it is more important for me to like start making money. But I think the most important things I learned were whether or not I actually want calligraphy to be my business, because that is very different than just like taking a couple classes and having it be a hobby. But I think more important for me was like, do I want to self-manage myself? It's like it's very different having a boss. Even though I had my own team when I was at work, I also had a boss. And so like I could always go to my boss and get like advice or guidance or, bounce ideas off of them. And when you're running your own business, you really have to have that CEO mentality where like you're the one calling the shots, you're the one driving the direction of the business. That was a big shift for me because I've always worked in like a collaborative team setting. I've never really worked alone. In the very beginning, it felt so lonely. I really didn't think I would like it. But kind of by the end of that chunk of time, I was like, I like this enough to keep pursuing it, to keep giving it a shot, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't like, oh, at the end of 6 months, all of a sudden I was profitable and everything was great and it was like rainbows and butterflies.
Mm-hmm.
Like it wasn't like that, but it was like, okay, I have enough information about how the last 6 months went to be like, I want to keep pursuing this. And I think the great thing about being your own boss is like, you can make a choice at any time to change your mind about that.
That's true.
So if at any point I'm like, you know what, this isn't serving me anymore, I just want another job where someone tells me what to do, I can also go back and do that.
Yeah, I feel like people don't really think about what it requires as a calligraphy CEO of like getting a big problem and not being able to give it to like your manager or store manager or whatever to kind of deal with. If you have a tough client, you're the one who has to deal with that tough client, right? You can't just like push it off to someone else.
Yeah. And like your business is not as complex as like these other organizations I worked in, but it's like the analogy I like to use is like when you're at a big company, you own one piece of the big pie. When you're your own boss, you own the whole pie, right? So the pie is smaller, but you own all of it. And so that does look different than where you're just like staying in your lane and owning like one small piece. It's part of the challenge and the things that are exciting and why I love entrepreneurship and community. Finding community is so important. So through programs like yours and mine, where people can really connect and ask each other questions, like you might not have a boss to be your mentor, but you have other peers who are doing something similar who can help you out.
Yeah, exactly. I love that. And we'll definitely talk about our courses more later too. Let's kind of dive into some of the niches. So I know you've tried a whole bunch of stuff. I tried a whole bunch of stuff when we first started. Was there a moment in that 6-month period where you did a wedding and you're like, this is it? Or was it more gradual?
I was really lucky that I had some really great first clients. So I had friends who were my first clients. That's really how I first got started, was like reaching out to friends getting married and then doing a couple signs for them, even a couple free ones, because the most important thing was to build my portfolio. But that got me my first paid clients and they were like so supportive. I loved working with them. They were just so appreciative of my work and, you know, what I contributed to their day. I think just those feelings have always really driven me. Like in my past jobs, I've actually been like a client success manager and account manager. And so my whole career has basically been working with clients kind of one-on-one, you know, and also like in other different situations, like helping clients like figure out their business model, always kind of in a consulting capacity. And so I kind of felt like it was a very similar type of function I was doing, but now I was doing it in the wedding industry. And I've always really loved working with people. So, and then it comes and then you add weddings on top of it. I'm just like, this is
that's so great that like it overlaps with, you know, your previous job and that you're using those skills that you learned in a previous job into your current job and like really being able to be client focused and providing that experience with them. Okay, so you're 3 years into your business now. Let's kind of dive into what things you had to do in order to create a profitable and stable business.
I definitely thought about the different work streams that I had. So one of the like tools that I have in my programs is called this income planning worksheet. And that worksheet came out of me doing the exercise myself, which was like, okay, if I want to actually make this a sustainable business, then I should figure out how much money I want to make every month from it, then work backwards and then break down which work streams I will use to get to that number, right? Because you can't just say like, I want to make 5,000 a month or 10,000 a month, but not have a plan for how to get there, right? You need to be able to say, I want to make like 5,000 a month and 3,000 is going to come from weddings that I book, or 2,000 is going to come from engraving events, and then keep breaking that down and be like, if that much from weddings, how many weddings do I have to do every month? If I want that much from events, how many events do I have to do? So when you keep working backwards from there, then you actually come up with a plan of like, here's my target number of weddings to book every month. Here's my target number of events to book every month, and so on. So in the beginning, obviously I had all these different work streams in my plan, and I would kind of update it like once a quarter, because a lot of our business is seasonal. Weddings are seasonal. There's, as you know, a lot more events during the holidays. Same with like pop-ups too, like holiday markets are a big thing. So like you kind of have to look at that document as a living document, because it's not going to be the same every month in the kind of business that we're in. Ultimately, in 2020, when I had to pivot because no weddings were happening, that's when I built up my education business. And that became a big part of my work stream. So like today, my business, as far as like income streams goes, it's like weddings, education for calligraphers, and then a small part of it is live events. I still love going on site when I can, but I definitely don't do that as much as I used to.
Everything that you just said was so tactical. And we also talk about that within the Craft Academy as well, is actually creating your income goal for the year, breaking it down to month by month, and then looking at every single month and trying to predict what is going to be the slow season and what's going to be the high season. So obviously with the Craft Academy, we do a huge focus on live events. And for the most part, it is very predictable. It's mostly the last 3 months of the year. And then whenever there's a retail holiday throughout the entire year. Every so often there's a product launch where we have influencer events and different banquets and galas and things that we can eventually put ourselves into, but that's not as predictable. So you're actually putting the ball in the client's court and hoping that they find you throughout the year. What we tend to do during the slower times of the year is working on workshops and doing other things like wholesaling opportunities, and even breaking into the wedding live event industry as well. So making those multiple offerings throughout the year so that you can actually somewhat predict what's going to happen so that you have a solid marketing plan. You don't have to just say like, I want to make 50K a month and then not have a way to do it. There's a big power in manifestation, but you also have to do the things that you need to do in order to make it happen. And I think both of our courses cover that really, really well. Give us a little bit more of like the educational side of your business. So you have obviously a huge passion for inspiring other calligraphers and teaching them how to be the CEO of their companies. And I know you have created a lot of the educational portions of it. Give us a little bit of a background on what resources you have and how that's so important in building the foundations of a calligraphy business.
In 2020, like I mentioned, when I started off the education branch, I started off by doing like one-on-one mentoring with calligraphers. And I started to see a bunch of like themes emerge around the pain points that people were feeling. And they were primarily like, I don't know where to start when it comes to starting my business. I don't know how to price my work. I don't know how to find clients. Those were really like the 3 themes that kind of came across with every person I talked to. And so the more I did these mentoring sessions, I had over 30 mentoring clients in that first couple of months. I decided to synthesize all of that knowledge and build it into resources that were more like self-serve, that people could access more easily than having to book like one-on-one sessions with me. And that's when Calligraphy CEO was born. And so there's actually a separate branch and website. So it's calligraphyceo.com. And my goal is basically to provide educational resources that no matter where you are in your calligraphy journey, if you want your hobby to be a business, you'll be able to find something there. So there's like free resources, like I have blog posts there. I have a free directory for people to join and have like their business be found. I send that directory to like people who are booking live events, people who are planners and looking for wedding calligraphers. Like I refer tons of jobs out to that directory, and like my other people do as well. And then I have paid resources where it's like more ad hoc, like you have a very specific issue. And so the first issue that people, I think, generally ask about all the time is pricing. So I have a whole page on pricing resources and a pricing toolkit. And then as I started to really think about like my niche, going back to that, I was like, well, I really love weddings. I'm really good at weddings. And so I should build resources that are specific to other calligraphers who want to do weddings. And that's when Pro Wedding Calligrapher was born. And then my new course, Seating Chart Success. And Pro Wedding Calligrapher is like my business course. It goes from starting your business, how to find clients, how to price, all of those key questions, all the way through how to manage the clients that you book, how to grow your business, but all focused on the wedding calligraphy space. And then the Seating Chart Success course came about because I kept getting how-to questions that weren't related to like business. It was more of like, how do I create like a complicated seating chart, because it is arguably like one of the most complicated pieces you can create for weddings. And so that I created a special course just around that. And then also talking about creating signage in general. Those are kind of like my offerings. But I really do love helping other calligraphers. So I'm always thinking about like what other things I can do to help, other calligraphers start and grow their businesses.
Yeah, absolutely. And how many students do you have in your course now?
Pro Wedding Calligrapher has like around 160 or so.
That's amazing.
Maybe 170. Yeah.
Yeah. And this is a lifetime membership,
great.
Right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So we started the course launched last year. So it's been over a year now, a year and a half or so. But we have this really vibrant Facebook community where, everybody who joins gets introduced and everyone's just super warm and welcoming. And then like it's pretty active in terms terms of questions and stuff, and people help each other, and I jump in there too. But I also share a lot of job opportunities in there. So every time something comes across my desk that, you know, I think is a better fit for someone else, I'll post it in there.
Yeah, that's awesome. I feel like we have a lot of overlap in both of our courses. Yours is just more focused on the wedding industry, and then mine is more focused on the live events and building multiple forms of income throughout the year. Mine is also a coaching program where we actually meet a couple times a week and actually have a conversation, whereas yours is more like hands off. It's more focused on the Facebook group, right?
Yeah, it's more like an on-demand model. So like the whole course is like self-paced, which I think people really love because everyone's schedules are different. So you can like visit the modules back at any time because it is lifetime access, and it is a little bit more like asynchronous support instead of like being on the call at the same time, but it's just a different format. Yeah.
And I think, you know, everyone learns in a different direction. Some people need a more hands-on approach and having that conversation. I think both courses are amazing. And I think Shaochen is just an incredible resource. So definitely check out her course, and we will link that down below for you as well. So let's talk more about like the wedding industry. For people who are looking to break into the wedding industry, what's like the most important thing that they would have to consider?
Yeah. So I think one of the first things that is often not thought about as a calligrapher is whether you want to be a product or a service-based business. And I kind of alluded to this earlier where I was like, I started off on Etsy and it was like pretty rough.
I am not an advocate for Etsy whatsoever. Right. I made a TikTok video and that blew up.
Well, there you go. Yeah. I think first we need to talk about what does it even mean to be like a service-based versus a product-based business.
Yeah, let's do that.
Well, let's start with product-based. I think people are more familiar with that. So product-based would be more transactional. You go to a website and it's like an e-commerce site. You see what you like, you purchase it, you add it to your cart, you check out. There isn't as much interaction between the buyer and the seller, right? And you can definitely personalize stuff for sure, but it's like you type it in a little box type of thing. So the kinds of people who are looking for that are typically people who know exactly what they want, and they're looking for something that fits their exact like idea that they have in mind. And they are also kind of price conscious because they're comparing you against every other product out there, especially on a product platform like Etsy or even like Google, right? And so what that means is that if you are selling as a product-based business, you need to create a large variety of different types of designs for everything so that people can find exactly what they want. Buyers are more likely to just buy a smaller volume from you. Again, if they're just looking for one specific thing. I remember having people on Etsy buy one table number from me, presumably because whatever set they had didn't have enough for something. I never thought that would be something that people would do, but hey, you know, I remember my bestseller was table number stands because people were looking for that very specific item and it had less competition on Etsy. It's what's called like a long tail item, meaning that it's like not as searched for. And so there's less people making it. And so here I was on Etsy selling a bunch of table number stands. That wasn't really what I got into the business to do, you know? So then I realized, okay, I really want to be a service-based provider. That's also what my strength is because like I said, from my background, working with clients, like that's something I know I'm already good at. And when you're a service-based business, you're able to provide a premium service because you're spending your time. So like there's more value for the client. You're taking a more consultative approach. You're actually able to craft their unique vision with them, which is something I also really love about being in this space. So if they come to you with inspiration, you get to take that and be like, okay, great. I'll draw from these different pictures that you posted. How about we do it like this? And you can charge more for that kind of design knowledge, that kind of brainstorming, that kind of like hand holding with the client. And in addition to that, I found that I didn't need to create all the kinds of variations of something because I just needed a couple pictures for people to see what my calligraphy style looked like and that I could create things like this for them to put trust in me that I could also create something else. I didn't have to do every single project under the sun to show them that I could do it, right? And that actually made things a lot easier for me because I could be like, okay, great. Well, we'll take your inspiration photo and here's some work that I've done in the past and we'll basically kind of merge these two ideas. And those types of clients, they tend to spend spend more with you too, because they're already working with you on something. So then you're like, it's really easy to have the conversation and be like, well, let's think about what else you need for your wedding. Like typically people need these 5 things. And then they'll like have that discussion and be like, oh yeah, you're right. I also need these things. And so it becomes a lot easier to create a much bigger package for people. Like I think my average deal size on Etsy was maybe $20, $30. My minimum wedding right now is $1,200, and my average wedding is probably like $1,500 or so right now. So, and that's constantly increasing every season, every year. You know, you're working with a very different audience, and that's why it's really important that when you first start in the wedding industry as a calligrapher, you think about whether you want to be a product or service-based model, because your audience is different. Your marketing strategy is different. Like the way you manage your clients is different. And so for people who aren't sure which one is right for them, I usually have them think about, how do you want to interact with your clients? Because some people don't like that kind of one-on-one interaction. They would prefer it just to come through their e-commerce system and fulfill an order and not really interact with people. And that's totally fine. And I think the way that you generate a profitable business when it's product-based is on volume, right? So because people are more price sensitive, your products are probably going to have your orders are going to be a smaller value. Then in order to generate all the income you want, you are operating a volume business.
So what would you recommend to calligraphers who want to be in the wedding industry, but also want to be product-based?
So there are a couple great examples of people who do this. The people who have done this really well and that are doing this like full time and like always booked and busy and whatever, I've seen kind of 2 things. So there's one calligrapher I'm thinking of who just does acrylic signs, and that's her sole focus. She just sells acrylic signs, but she has lots of different categories within that. So like I was saying about like the product-based side, people are looking for something really specific. So she has a section that's like all welcome signs, all seating charts, and you can literally pick the design, the color palette, you know, like everything, every combination that you could want, but she has multiple designs of each of those things. So she's done really well niching within even the wedding signage space to be like, I want to do acrylic wedding signage and one calligraphy style, and then like a bunch of different types of designs. And then there's another shop that is kind of all just signage in general. And you can find wedding signs and you can find home signs. But I think what they have in common is that they have lots of different designs and offerings so that people can kind of pick exactly what they want and they'll find what they're looking for on their website.
Oh my gosh. Wow. That's awesome. I guess I'm a little confused about like the service-based versus like the product-based part, because your service base also provides the welcome signs and the seating charts and stuff. So how do you like differentiate yourself within those 2 items?
Well, it's like I said, it's the client interaction. So do you want it to be more transactional when they could go to your shop? And the reason why they have so many variety is they can pick the exact thing they want. Or do you want to be more of a consultative approach and be like, oh, you saw this on Style Me Pretty and you want to replicate it? That's not something you could typically find on an e-commerce site when you're looking for something really unique. Like someone who wants to find a jug seating chart isn't going to buy that off Etsy, or someone who wants to find like, you know, a bunch of acrylic boxes or it's 8-foot display or something like that. But it doesn't have to be like that unique, right? It's more of like the people who are coming to a service-based business. They're people who want and value the guidance that I, as a wedding professional, can provide to them and be able to walk them through and say like, these are the things that I typically see people get, and here's something else that you might not have thought of. When you're a shopper going to Etsy, you don't have that guide with you. That's part of the additional premium that you have when you're a service-based business.
Yeah, and we'll give one example too. And the one that I'm thinking of is the seating chart that you actually created, where you were able to draw all the different places that matter to the couple, and you were able to link those locations and the seating charts and stuff. And that just looked so gorgeous. And that's definitely not something that you would be able to purchase off of Etsy for like $80, right? That's coming from a professional artist who has a brain that can, you know, imagine all of this and then make it actually happen. So that's Shaochen's specialty. And that's definitely the service-based business that she is trying to provide for her client.
There's a lot more back and forth. You're working with them a lot more hands-on for sure.
Yeah. I'm also getting married in May. So like, I'm always looking at your profile and trying to think of some ideas too. I might just be lazy and just print it out, you know?
I know it's always hard when it comes to designing your own stuff, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially if you do this for a living. So it's like, how much of this do I actually want to do for my own? But anyway, okay. So it sounds like, the service-based is kind of the way to go, especially if you want to find brides with a bigger budget. So how do you find those specific clients that do value that experience that you can provide as a calligrapher?
So I think regardless of your business model that you choose, the first thing that you want to do is create your portfolio. And it doesn't have to be, when I say create your portfolio, it kind of sounds like really snazzy photography and professional pictures. Like, it doesn't have to be like that at all. It's really more about you figuring out the products that you want to offer and create that you like to do, doing some of that experimentation we talked about before, and then getting pictures of your work, because ultimately photos sell. Like, regardless of what type of business model you have, photos are what's going to convince people that they like your style, that they like your work, and that they want to book you, right? Like I said, in a service-based business, you don't have to have 5 variations of every product, but you need to at least have one example of what you're trying to sell so that they can imagine what it would look like with your calligraphy and your touch. Fun fact, I don't think I actually created my very first seating chart until 2021 or something.
Oh, wow.
I'd already been in business for a year and a half.
Yeah.
The point I'm trying to make is that I had enough in my portfolio. Someone was willing to trust me that I could make a seating chart without having done that exact thing before. You just need enough in your portfolio to give people confidence that you can do whatever they're like tasking you to do. So that's
what I love about this section is that you and I have a lot of overlap in our courses. Like, we're not in each other's courses by any means, but we consult each other as other, calligraphy professionals who have courses. And so we talk to each other from time to time, but we've never really compared our courses side by side. What's awesome is that everything that you learn in my course or Shaochen's course, you can actually apply it to any industry. And this is kind of proof of that, right? So if you want to break into the live events, you have to create a portfolio. You have to show the client that you're going to look professional and amazing when you're sitting in their store or at an influencer event. You have to take pictures of the things that you're trying to create. Like, if it's an engraving item or perfume, you want to engrave it, take pictures of it, and then show the client that this is what you can do and this is what you can imagine. So photos and videos, they really speak volumes on what you are trying to convey to your client. So no matter what, it seems like the first step is always get a portfolio.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be like, the way I teach mine is like, you don't have to have a website to start, because Instagram is a lot more accessible for people. The whole point is have a place where people can see your work. And you also don't need like a professional photographer. Like in my course, I talk about free editing tips. I did all my own photos, like in the beginning, and I didn't have any professional photos come back from weddings. And that's how you start. You have to just like build it up, and it kind of snowballs from there.
Exactly. And you don't have to have a professional camera. You don't have to buy one. Like, everything I've also created is with my iPhone 10 and edited on my phone. And so I also have tutorials on that. So like, really, you don't have to get professional and super crazy. You can get scrappy and still get clients, whether from weddings or live events. So
totally. I think like the key message here is like, everyone starts somewhere. It's really easy to look at people who already have like thousands of followers and professional photos and be like, oh my God, how do I get from where I am to where that is? And like, the answer is it takes time, and everyone starts somewhere, trust me. So once you have some pictures in a place where people can look at them, then it's about reaching out to your network. And I think this is something that people find a little bit intimidating, but the truth is, if you think about it, if you never talk about your business, people aren't going to know about it. Like, you are your biggest proponent of your own business. And if you don't talk about it, then you can't expect other people to know about it either. And so in my course, I talk about like creating a friends and family campaign and how to reach out to people you already know and approach them. And then I also talk about how to expand your network specifically for weddings with planners, and what other types of vendors you want to reach out to, like strategically, and how to do it in a way that's very organic, that doesn't feel salesy. Like, I know a lot of people feel afraid of that. So I have like templates and things in my Pro Wedding Calligrapher course to help with that. But that's how I got started. I really I put my work out there, I put myself out there, and you only just need a couple great clients who will then give you reviews or, share about your work. And that's how things start to take off.
Incredible. I love it. So there's a snowball effect. You really start from the very beginning, just a teeny tiny little ball of snow, and then it just avalanches on. I love it. And you're always learning, always updating your course, right? Based off of the market and things. So yeah, definitely check that out. Cool. So I think we're reaching the end of our interview because we're running out of time, unfortunately. Yeah. And this has just been so amazing. The conversation's flown by so fast. So I do have a couple last minute questions that I like to ask all of the people that I invite onto our channel. What's your favorite part about owning a calligraphy business?
I love that I can take it whatever direction I want to take it in. And there are days, this kind of goes back to that conversation about like being your own boss, being self-managed. There are days where it feels like daunting because sometimes I just wish someone would give me the answers, Yeah. But I think like I've gotten to the point in my mindset where it's like, well, what's the fun in that? Like the big benefit of it is that this business can be whatever I want it to be, right? I don't think a few years ago when I started, I never thought I would have a course. I don't know if you thought you'd have the Craft Academy, like
not at all. Right. I was like, I will never be a coach. That's lame.
I know. I was like,
and here I am. I love it.
Right. Like for me, I was like, oh my God, creating and building an online course sounds so daunting. Like I was absolutely overwhelmed when I like made the decision to do it. Anyway, so the whole point is that like you can take it any direction you want to go. So if maybe I decide that next year I just want to do products because I'm going to have a baby, and maybe that's just going to be easier to do something lower touch, than service-based. Like I could do that if I wanted to do that. And it just kind of feels like, the world is your oyster and you can really like go after what you choose. And I think it does take a little bit of time to feel that kind of empowerment, because I think in the beginning you just feel a lot of imposter syndrome and stuff. My advice there is like the more you put yourself out of your comfort zone, the more you embrace the discomfort, the more you get used to doing things you've never done before. And that's when it starts to feel really fun.
So I know you started in 2019. 2020 was certainly a challenge for everyone, and especially for the creative industry. What would you tell yourself in 2019? Knowing what you know now?
So 2019 is when I started. What I would tell myself is like, it's definitely a long game building a business. I think goals are important, but it's also important to be flexible. And the most important thing is to learn about yourself. And like we were just talking about like what you don't like, being able to change your plans. And I think just like knowing that I would get to like, obviously then I didn't know I would get to this point where I'm a 6-figure business that I can pay myself, that I can pay my bills, and like have some savings. Like that felt like a total pipe dream, but like you just got to keep iterating, keep experimenting, take science lens to it. That's one thing I love too is, we talked about how I like to look at data, think about business as being math, really, is being able to kind of take your emotions aside and think about it like a scientist. If something's not working, what's your hypothesis for what you could change, and then test and tweak one thing at a time. And that's what makes it really interesting and exciting for me. So even if I feel like something was a failure, I think about the things that I learned from that. Just keep taking that and keep going, That's the big message for me is like, keep going. It takes time. Building a business is a long-term play.
So looking at the bigger picture and thinking things from a mathematical perspective and really just removing some of the feelings out of that. I literally loved everything that we talked about in this interview. I think, we do have a lot of people in the audience who are trying to take their calligraphy business full time. And I think this interview in itself, having come from 2 calligraphers who are now full-time that have come from a corporate job, is going to be so inspirational for them. So thank you so much, Shaochen, for coming on and giving us the insight into your business, your educational resources, and ultimately how to build a successful and financially stable calligraphy business. So if you love this interview and learned a ton from it, I know I did, definitely hit that subscribe button along with the alert bell so you don't miss any more of our educational videos. We do have a lot of amazing educational videos coming down the pipeline just for you. So in closing, if you're looking to break into the wedding industry and grow your wedding clients and really get to those high level, amazing, ideal clients, definitely check out Shaochen's course. I will link that down below for you so that you can actually learn from her. She's such an amazing resource. And I always love talking to her about her business and how we can make each other's businesses a lot better. It's great to just have colleagues in that, know. In addition to that, if you are looking to build out additional income streams and break into the live event industry to reach your calligraphy business goals and build the calligraphy business of your dreams, definitely book a call with me and see if the Craft Academy is a good fit for you. We are closing on October 31st this year, so definitely get on that train before it leaves for the rest of the year, because the events are going to take off. So Shaochen, tell us where we can find you.
Yeah, so I would love to connect with all of you on Instagram. I'm at monstera.gold, and I'm sure Rosie will have that in the notes. And then you can also find me online at calligraphyco.com, and that's where you'll find all those resources we were talking about.
Yay! Oh my gosh, it was so amazing to have you on here, Shaochen. Do you want to do like a high five or something through Zoom?
Sure. All right, ready? 1, 2, 3.
Okay.
There we go.
All right. Thank you, Shaochen. Have a good one.